Welcome to the Art of Black Miami podcast, organized by Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. Our stories introduce emerging and experienced artists who make Miami an exciting place to live and visit. I'm Rosie Gordon-Wallace, curator and arts advocate. Miami is my home since the 1970s. My passion is cultivating the vision and talent of contemporary artists from the Caribbean diaspora, artists of color, and immigrant artists. Many cultures and languages come together to shape the character of Miami. Good afternoon, Mr. Cornelius Tulloch. How are you?
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. I'm feeling really great, and it's been a great day.
Wonderful to have you. Son of the diaspora.
Yes.
Jamaican and African American experiences growing up. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, definitely. And I feel like Miami is that culmination of cultures, existing in Caribbean tradition, but also American assimilation changes. That has influenced much of my work. You see that Caribbean influence in the colors and plants and things, and it really has just inspired me to view my own identity as a landscape, as objects and spaces that influence the work that I make, coming from both cultures and seeing how they meld and clash.
So, Cornelius, you are an interdisciplinary artist and designer. For our listeners, what does that really mean?
Having an interdisciplinary practice really is just having the ability to tell stories through different mediums, whether it be painting, photography, or architecture. I always say that my focus is the story behind the work. The architecture story started real early. Started at Dash here in Miami. So studying art and architecture at the same time really allowed me to see the way that these mediums work together. So Eric Henkin, amazing teacher, guide through the entire process, and has just an amazing light at Dash.
So architecture influence from Eric Henkin at Dash onto where?
Onto Cornell University. So going to one of the top architecture schools in the nation and seeing, even within what I was learning, there was so much about Caribbean heritage that I wanted to bring into my own way of viewing architecture. And that's when I really began to see how culture itself shifted and molded the spaces. So that's really the intersection where my architectural eye began to infuse with my kind of artistic repertoire. So I began to think, how can I really change the way people experience spaces when it comes to art? And how can we begin to think about architecture as a more human thing that has emotion and shows culture in a contemporary way?
So you're planning to go somewhere to build something strange and fabulous, or?
Definitely planning to build amazing spaces right now. I'm really focused on the idea that architecture can serve communities. If you think of something that's maybe imposing on them, but I see architecture as something that creates a structure or platform for people to see the performance of their identities, performance of their cultures. And that's what I plan to do here now that I'm back in Miami and stepping into a kind of architectural art installation space within my own work.
We all love beautiful spaces. And from what you just said, I garnered that you're going to create in spaces that have been underserved.
Yes.
Beautiful spaces. And I can't wait to see it. I want you to share a little bit about the photographs that you have representing families in domestic spaces.
All Caribbean people, coming, your home is really where your culture really begins, whether it's from the kitchen, the veranda, the porch, any of these spaces really just built up who you are.
Lights for you. Watch it. I truly don't need no dinner tonight. I thought you need some?
When the pandemic started, I came back from New York, was home with my family, and just seeing how this space was affecting our relationships. Because, Caribbean family or African American as well, your immediate family isn't your only family. You have your neighbors, your cousins, your auntie who's not your auntie, who you used to spend time with. Seeing how that shifted when you were now away from these people and had to connect with them in different ways, I was like, what is a way to re-explore the home, re-explore domestic space? It's important for us who are here in Miami to see our stories come to life, to see ourselves in art galleries and art spaces, and to know that there is space for our stories to be told and that it is valued as well.
What is that series called?
It's called the Genesis series.
And how would you describe it?
You will begin to be invited into the space of homes of Black and Caribbean families throughout Miami. You'll begin to see the colors that really immerse you into the culture itself, to see that the architecture in these spaces have feelings. They are spaces that really begin to build you up identity-wise, and they hold so many stories within them. So you begin to see different bodies in these spaces and different things that you may also identify with if you are Black or Caribbean, or even the everyday person growing up in Miami may begin to identify some of these things contextually.
Who are these subjects?
These subjects are my family members, community members, people that are everyday friends.
Are these photographs on the wall?
I really try and merge contemporary sense of photography with traditional. So you'll see frames placed in compositions amongst the walls that don't look like normal framing, and then also bridging out into some spaces where I begin to play with material that is printed on. Hanging in an architectural sense, creating drapings, allowing you to immerse yourself. So I really see my photography work jumping off the wall and becoming an immersive experience for people.
What was that process like, and how long was it?
So this process has been honestly over a year of just documenting. Mostly has been with my own family, where I'll be like, either it's just the right moment, I'll be like, all right, I'm going to get out the lights and things and get it really just candid moments have been amazing for the process. And I think even working with my family in this sense where they're not professional models allows it to be real. There's a rawness even to the beautiful images. And also my friends who have invited me to their family dinners to just be invited into these spaces to experience these moments and really just capture the real essence of what it's like to be in the moment.
I could eat that little piece of salmon. I don't want to eat I want to eat my real food tomorrow.
What did you eat?
I ate that jerk chicken.
Where did you get jerk chicken from?
What do you want your viewers, when they see this work, to experience?
I love the idea of an image that makes you think, makes you meander through the space. So when I bring in these colors and lighting, I want people to really think about how culture is represented, even in the most smallest moments of everyday life. Can you take from context on the wall what things are in the space? What are the gestures that the people are making? What are these relationships? So that you really begin to see that there's a further story beyond the image itself, and that can resonate. And I love when people can see the image and be like, oh, that's just how my grandma's bedstand is. That's how my kitchen is set up. And being able to have these relationships where people who may not always be in connection with the art world or art in the traditional sense begin to feel a sense of I can be a part of this dialogue and conversation because this is something that I also identify or feel myself a part of. And then with people who aren't, just to be able to see the beauty within it and observe, invite them into these spaces.
Your thesis project at Cornell has been talked about. Can you share it with our listeners, the specifics of that project?
Being at Cornell was such a journey within itself, knowing that I was coming to this space and wanting to talk about Caribbean folks and people. I knew that with my thesis, I was like, I don't know how it's going to be received. Where do I even begin research-wise at this predominantly white school who doesn't have as much research, but they embraced it. And I tapped into networks of architects who are working with Black communities from Cornell. Another Jamaican architect, Nina Cook-John, helped me kind of develop my research, and Amanda Williams. And all these different people showed me community within my process. Right here in Little Haiti, the community is changing drastically. Rents going through the roof, places are changing. Yeah. You walk through neighborhoods that you used to know and it's all vacant. So seeing that people are no longer able to afford these spaces that we have poured so much love and community into, I wanted to create architecture that held space for us, held space for our communities. So I just delved into this idea of the porch and how can I bring the idea of the porch or veranda to a public scale? What do we want in these spaces? How do we use this as a space to invite new people coming to these communities, but also to save space? Throughout Little Haiti, I proposed different artistic installations that were also architectural that allowed community programmings from throughout the neighborhood, like the Little Haiti Cultural Center could have events at these different pop-up installations within vacant lots around the city, or even like the Toussaint Louverture statue, even the coin laundry, they have that empty space.
The Toussaint Louverture statue is on Northeast 2nd Avenue at the corner right by the Catholic Church. You pass there and people are playing dominoes around the
Exactly.
statue.
These are places that have been iconic to this neighborhood, but now we see that they're dwindling.
The recognition that you just got is validation for all of this work. Please tell me about your latest residency.
I did the artist in residence in the Everglades. The month of January, I was one of the 2022 fellows, part of a cohort of fellows who also looked like me and were interested in stories of the similar thing. Has been great because we've also been in connection with each other and contacting throughout this process. I enjoyed this idea of going to the Everglades and spending this time, and it really has just given me the space to have a change of pace, to also look into all these different stories of different Black communities that have been affected by the Everglades. Within my work itself, it's like, how do we connect culturally to different landscapes?
Where did your mind go in the Everglades during times of silence? And lastly, were you afraid at any point?
Yes, I was afraid at many points. It was different to have that level of solitude, but I found comfort in that discomfort. Really noticing in those moments where I felt that slight fear, there also was an ease of comfort of knowing like I'm really out here by myself, listening to the sound, listening to not only the stories of these people, but being able to experience it, walking through this landscape. It really just was eye-opening.
You mentioned that there is a history of African American lives there.
When I really first got involved with AIRIE and knowing that I was really interested in the Florida Highwaymen, which were a series of 26 African American painters who weren't particularly in the Everglades, but along the Atlantic coast of Florida. And the way that they captured the landscape through that lens was just amazing. And knowing that they created a collective, in a sense, to sell these paintings out of the trunks of their cars, I began to then research deeply what histories actually lie here. And then I began to notice the Black Seminoles. There's so much nuance within Black Seminole culture and where their actual heritage comes from, whether they're Seminole and Black or they're from the Black freedmen, Maroons who came and joined Seminole tribe, but also the history of immigrants from Jamaica and the Bahamas coming into the Everglades. And another interesting one is the Saltwater Railroad, which comes from north, people coming from other states into Florida, traversing through the Florida landscape to actually return and go back to the Caribbean, to the Bahamas, to Cuba. So it's a story that we don't know, but it's right here in Florida. This transatlantic journey going backwards and connecting to these cultures. And that has just opened up so much conversation for me within the space there.
Where are these stories held?
The Daniel Beard Research Center, which also has collections on loggers who've worked in the park, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and all these more contemporary Black stories that are there. Artists are now coming to delve into these stories, working together in collaboration, and I think that's the beauty of AIRIE.
So as you mine and meander through these archives, what are you going to do with these stories?
I see this work culminating into a series of collages and paintings that begin to talk about these specific narratives and show the various Black identities that exist within the Everglades. My work is researching these different narratives and storylines, but also making them accessible to people who don't have the access to extensive libraries or research or resources from these organizations that have sustained a lot of my work, or like universities. And so making that accessible and also digestible to the everyday person.
Where do you see the greatest need for your interventions?
Directly in these neighborhoods, Little Haiti, North Miami, everywhere. I feel like Miami as a whole is in a very shifting state. And I think the way that I want to engage with art on a public level to document Caribbean and American and African American stories will be very vital in the shift that this city will be going through and preserving space for ourselves within it.
What next?
In these months ahead, you'll begin to see me community programmed shows where it's not just about viewing the art, but experiencing it, inviting the community to come. Currently planning a show to be at Laundromat Art Space.
5900 Northeast 2nd Avenue?
Yes. Right here in Little Haiti, where I will document Caribbean American families who come out to the actual show and be a part of the art process. And I think that's a really exciting thing, just to really engage with the everyday people.
This was an Art of Black Miami podcast, sponsored by the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. I am Rosie Gordon-Wallace. Today we introduce you to Cornelius Tulloch, an interdisciplinary artist and designer who believes in architectural accessibility and beauty. His projects honor African American and Caribbean experiences in the shifting cultural landscape of Miami. We recorded this conversation in the historic neighborhood of Little Haiti, a mecca for Black art and culture. Art of Black Miami highlights the year-round art and culture scene in Miami's heritage neighborhoods and across communities in Greater Miami and Miami Beach. If you are enjoying our stories, visit artofblackmiami.com to learn more. Engage us on social media, post and share using the hashtag ArtofBlackMiami. The Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau is an accredited, independent, not-for-profit sales and marketing organization. GMCVB's mission is to attract visitors to Greater Miami and Miami Beach for leisure, business, and conventions. For up-to-date art events, promotions, and more information, visit artofblackmiami.com.